today we are joined by Ashley Everhart Queen and Doug Young, two of our faculty members who also serve as advisors for students interested in pre-health careers and pre-med careers. So do you all want to introduce yourselves real quick? Don't duke it out.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Queen. I am in the Department of Kinesiology. I am the pre-PA and nursing advisor, and so I work with students across campus who are interested in going to PA school or nursing school once they graduate from William & Mary.
Thanks, Ashley.
I'm Doug Young. I'm a professor in the chemistry department, and I am one of three pre-med advisors that we're working with this year. So I'm here to help out with those kind of questions and advising in class selection, things like that. I'm also the chair of the undergraduate research committee. So I do a lot of research stuff and fellowships as well. So I can answer some of those questions too, if you have them.
Yeah, and I think our intention with this time today is very relaxed, very informal, but really just wanting to make sure that you as incoming students and family members know what you may need to take into consideration with fall course planning in regards to pre-health, pre-PA, pre-nursing, and pre-med course selection. So I think maybe if both of you can do like a really high level overview, and then we can turn it over to the students for Q&A. And I'll post links in the chat as we go.
So I think for most pre-health, regardless if it's med, nursing, PA, or even our therapy, we have a advisor who covers therapy as well. All of our students end up taking a year of biology, at least a year of chemistry. Stat is a really common prereq, and then psychology is also a really common prereq. So there are, even if you don't know which direction you want to go in, there are some common classes that if you're going to go one of these tracks, you're probably going to need at some point.
Yeah, and I would say like with pre-med stuff, sometimes a little bit, there's similar requirements as well, many of the same overlap. There's a lot more of a chemistry requirement. I'm not just saying that as a chemist, but you have to take 5 courses to get ready for the MCATs. So it's a good idea sometimes to make sure, this is a very individualistic thing when you're planning your courses, but I think, in an ideal world, one is taking, biology, chemistry, calculus, physics, 2. Like some people, I don't recommend taking all 3 because you're also going to take a call 100 or 150 in the fall. You're also trying to adjust to college and things like that. So like really, even if you feel really well prepared, maybe it's not the best time to like go heads first into this kind of intense kind of schedule. So like think about it your own way. You need to probably take at least one of these kind of STEMmy classes to just keep yourself on track, because the one thing to remember when you are registering is that, like, especially in physics, chemistry, and biology, they're very hierarchical, and we only offer certain courses certain semesters. So if you don't get in the rotation in the fall, you won't be able to take that kind of science until the next fall, unless you have AP credits or weird things like that. But it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're planning your schedule.
Mm-hmm. I think one really common question that I get from most of my pre-health students is, what major do I need to be, or do I need to plan to be? And with any of the pre-health tracks, the schools really are not concerned about your major. And so that's important to remember. You can be any major you would like on campus. The key thing for any of these paths is looking at the prerequisites you have to take. So if you're an art major, for instance, you can still take the chemistry, the biology, the physics. You just have to make sure you're checking your major boxes and those prereqs, but you are really free to choose what you're interested in. And that's something we do encourage our students to really think about.
Yeah, tacking on that, kind of like, that's the nice part about the William & Mary curriculum, right? Is that if you think about, probably, I don't know, maybe you've seen this, soon you will see it many, many times, but if you think about the call curriculum or the William & Mary curriculum, you have like a third of your call classes, a third of electives, and a third of your major courses. So basically, if you are a science major, sometimes you're double dipping, but if you're not, you still can be pre-health. It's just a lot of those elective courses are going to be filled by the pre-health requirements. I've had government majors, I've had theater majors that are also then go to med school as well, or other health profession schools. So I think you don't have to be restricted to the major, you just have to get the prereqs in, and you can kind of double dip some. And you can plan well, but you don't have to do one thing or another. But that's the nice thing about our kind of curriculum that we have going.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that that you can be any major and still be pre-PA, pre-nursing, pre-OT, PT, med, whatever that is, right? And by having this group of pre-professional advisors, you still have access as a student to the resources you need to be successful when it is then time to do those applications for professional school. So that's really important to us at William & Mary's, make sure all students really get involved into the liberal arts education, do a lot of exploration, and still have all of the resources they need to be successful in whatever their next step is after graduation. So like we mentioned earlier, this is really informal and really just want to make sure that we provide an opportunity for students to ask questions about pre-health, pre-med advising. So encourage folks to drop questions in the chat, use the Q&A feature. We want this time to be useful for you. So it looks like we have one question. Do medical schools recognize call classes as fulfilling pre-med requirements? For example, the student is taking Psych 100 this fall, would that be considered a psych class, or do they need to take intro to psych?
I think it kind of depends, but I think to cover your bases, it's probably fair to assume that there's some double dipping you can do with call requirements. For instance, psych as a social science is a MCAT requirement, but it also counts as a call 200. I think the 100 and 150s are less likely to secure those spots. Maybe you can use them as part of your writing requirement. But for the most part, I think it's pretty clear guidelines of the courses that you can take. And so I would, just to make sure you cover your bases, I would take those courses and assume those are what's counting, as opposed to trying to substitute other things in, because then it gets a little confusing on applications. And you don't want to give any of these schools kind of a chance to like question your application, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah. And we do have for pre-med specifically, I don't want to speak for Ashley's areas, but for pre-med specifically, we do have a pre-med guide to the call. Sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
It's very similar for the other pre-health paths. One thing that I just like to tell all of my students is we have 2 different intro psychology courses.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For most of our pre-health, you need intro to social psych. There is this exception for some of the PA and the nursing programs, and I think one of the therapy schools in Virginia, where you also have to take the natural psych. So that's where contact your advisors, your pre-health advisors, and we can help guide you through that. But pay close attention when you look at the guides we have as to which of those classes you actually want. Most times it's 202, Psych 202, which is social.
Right.
Actually, that's a good segue. There is another question in the chat there that says, when should I have my first meeting with the pre-med advisor?
Oh, yeah. When should they meet with you
Oh,
all?
well, me. Oh, right. I'm the pre-med advisor. I forget. I'm new. Sorry, I'm not that new, but I'm a little new. Yeah, I think that's kind of a personal thing. Like, I think probably, sometime in that first semester to year is a good time to touch base, to kind of just familiarize yourself with us. Like, there are 3 of us now, so it's a little bit more spread out in terms of ease in getting meetings and things like that. It's not something you need to do the second you get on campus. I think, you have some time, you have 4 years to start thinking about all of this stuff. So like, there's so many other things probably initially in the first month or so that you're going to be busy with, but I would try and touch base with a pre-health advisor, sometime in that maybe first semester, and maybe get a meeting on the books, just so we get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is not, I have a lot of students who think they need to meet with their pre-health advisor day one. You do have a pre-major advisor who may or may not be one of the pre-health advisors. They also all have our information, and so they can point you in our direction as well. I will say, if you are looking at one of our early assurance programs, and we do have a few, there's a therapy, PA, nursing, and a pre-med. There's a couple pre-med ones. Those, if you're interested in, you probably do need to connect with us a little sooner. I know for the PA side, it's a very specific path you have to go down. And so I like to talk to students usually in the first or second semester, so we can make sure you're on track for that.
Good point. Question from a student. So I signed up for a lab / discussion for fall biology. Is there a guarantee that I will have a spot in the lecture? Or is there a potential that I will not and have to drop the lab? So something to know, the way our registration process works for incoming students is because you won't be able to meet with your advisor of record until orientation. We limit the number of credit hours you can register for because we want you to get in the system. We want you to play around with it. But we want you to wait to finalize your schedule until orientation. And so one of the things that we do is we de-link the lab and the lectures for a lot of those inter-STEM classes. So so students might have registered for the lab / discussion already. When you get here for orientation, you will then have an opportunity to register for the lecture part as well. And they are linked in the sense that there are spots, right? So there's a same number of spots in the labs as there are in the lecture, right? So, and they will be co-linked at that juncture. Long way of saying you will be fine to register for the lecture during orientation. But for folks that did that, just know that that's how that piece will work out.
I would just tack on, like, typically it's harder to get in the labs because the labs are really space restricted, whereas oftentimes classrooms kind of can ebb and flow a little bit. So usually, like, if you're in the lab, you for sure can probably get in a lecture. Usually it's the cross that doesn't 100% work out 100% of the time.
Right. Thanks, Doug.
And we also, I don't know if it's true or not, but it used to be that right now it looks like there aren't as many spots in the lectures, but that will open up with registration, because we save spots for you, especially in those introductory chemistry and biology classes that to prevent all the upperclassmen from registering. There are spots that are going to be there, even if it maybe right now looks like there's not.
Yep. Okay, I've heard that we meet with an academic advisor in the fall during orientation. Is this when we can meet with a pre-health advisor, or how do we go about and how soon can we make it? So I think we mostly answered that question around when to make an appointment with a pre-health advisor. But again, you will meet with your pre-major advisor during orientation. So the Monday of orientation, you will meet with your pre-major advisor. As Ashley indicated, you could end up with one of the pre-health advisors that happens to be your pre-major advisor. So that is a possibility. And if not, encourage folks to reach out to the pre-health advisors, once the dust kind of settles a little bit after that first week of classes. But yes, they are available for you. All of them also have very extensive websites that go over lots of really good information about how to get started. So we want to make sure, again, students have access to all of that during that registration window.
I think there was an AP question says it's answered, but wasn't it? Is that true?
Oh, maybe I missed
You have
that.
AP credits from bio, psych, and calc.
Oh, okay.
Med schools take these credits. I can quickly answer that. I think that a lot of med schools do take these credits. There are some that do not. So like, if there's a specific school that you're really interested in, or one that is like within your state that would be an in-state school, it's a good thing to double check. But for the most part, I think the majority of schools will take those AP credits. But again, just start double checking potential places that you're interested in to make sure that that's not one of the few exceptions.
Thanks, Doug, for catching that. Someone asked, I was not able to register for any STEM classes in July. Is there any way I'm able to get into these classes during orientation? So the way the orientation schedule is shaping up right now is Monday, you will meet with your advisor. And then Tuesday morning, incoming students will have their own window to finish registration, to get up to full time, that sort of thing. So Tuesday morning, you'll have a window where you can go in there and register for these classes. Tuesday afternoon is when the add drop window opens. So that's when continuing students get back into the system too. So that is an even longer window that allows students the opportunity to make changes to their schedule. So just know that if your schedule isn't set in stone that Tuesday morning, there's still time to make changes and make adjustments. So yeah, short answer, yes, you'll be able to make changes to your schedule as part of the orientation process.
And I would also say the STEM classes are typically usually the larger ones anyways. So usually those are, those are the desired classes, they're a little easier to get into than maybe some of the smaller
Mhm.
15-person classes.
Someone asked, I'm interested in studying abroad my junior year. Should I take a more heavy workload my freshman year in the pre-med requirements? I'm already taking the intro class, biology, chem in my first semester. So thinking about study abroad, how does that fit into being a pre-health student?
I've had quite a few pre-health students actually study abroad very successfully. They have not typically had to concentrate a lot of their more difficult classes together in those cases either. I think the biggest thing is that when you apply to these programs, your GPA is important. And so you don't want to overload yourself, especially in that first year, to the point where you can't manage the work. And so I think taking bio and chem together, that's really common. Like Doug said, I would not throw physics probably in there with that. That's a lot. And I don't think time-wise you actually need to. I think that the way our curriculum is designed, you can fit it all. You may be doing a winter study abroad or a summer study abroad, but it is actually something that works out for most of our students who are interested in those study abroad opportunities.
Doug, anything from your end?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think if you really want to study abroad, you can find ways to do so. And I
Mhm.
wouldn't, if you're already taking biology and chemistry, you're already on track. So like there's no way that I wouldn't up it any more than you already are, right? So I
Mhm.
think you're good with those two courses. Take your call and then take another nicer course.
Nicer course. Is it common for pre-med / pre-health students to take a gap year before applying to professional school?
I think in terms of med school, it's kind of becoming more common than it was when I first started at William Mary, I would say. And I think it's kind of a personal, your own journey kind of thing. Like sometimes it's a good thing, right? Because I think if you think about it, you're at William Mary and you're spending 4 years and you're really studying intensely. And then you're going to go to med school and you're going to study intensely more again for another 4 years, and then you're going to do a residency and all these things. So sometimes that gap year actually serves as a nice, like, let me take a breath, let me recenter, refocus. So I think in the past, a lot of people have these really negative implications of a gap year, but I think more and more they're actually a really useful thing to think about. I would say a bunch of our students do and some don't. It's kind of your own path and how organized you are and how, sometimes if you're really overly involved at William Mary, it's sometimes hard to get the kind of like clinical hours that you may need to be a competitive applicant for a med school program. So like sometimes taking a gap year to do that, or sometimes getting the ability to do research. Are there a lot of these like post-bac programs that are really helpful to strengthen applications? Like maybe you didn't do as well as you would hope to GPA wise. And so you can build in a gap year to facilitate a stronger application. So I think it's pretty common anymore. It's not, you don't have to take a gap year, but you definitely should really keep it on the table and think about it.
For the other pre-health fields, I think the pre-PA students are the most common to take a gap year. And simply logistically speaking, that's the most realistic for them because PA school typically requires at least 1,000 direct patient contact hours before you can apply. And as an undergraduate student, that is a lot to take on. If you do the math on it, 1,000 hours it's close to full-time for a couple years with your studies included there. So that's really common for the pre-PA. Pre-nursing, they typically go straight in. And that's usually into a master's program. So they are usually very well geared towards that. Therapy, they don't always, but some do. And I think if you look at the average age of applicant and matriculant to any of these programs, it is increasing a little bit. It's not typically 22 years old anymore. It's usually 24 to 26. So it is a common thing, but again, it is personal preference as well.
Is Calc 2 recommended for pre-med students?
I would recommend it. I don't know that it's required, but I think it is really helpful. I think it depends on the program you're looking at. I think it helps just in terms of the other prereqs. Like if you take the Calc 2, it's going to help with the chemistry prereqs, it's going to help with the physics prereqs and things like that. So like if you can, I think you should probably take it, but I think is it a deal breaker? Probably not, depending on the school, but probably. But I would take it.
What about for pre-health?
Usually calculus is not required. If you do, I know therapy route, they tend to have pre-calc. Sometimes it'll be Calc 1. Calc 2 is not common for
Mhm.
any of our programs that people apply to. If you are on the fence of pre-med or one of the others, then it probably is a good idea to take it. But for most of ours, it's not going to be a necessity.
Next question. Are there resources at William & Mary for finding clinical experiences that are required for attending PA school? For example, getting a certification in phlebotomy. I plan on taking a gap year, but would like to find some clinical experience prior to graduating. So this is a very common question that I know both of our advisors get in different ways. So Ashley, if you want to tackle it first.
Yeah, so I'm a great person to email if you have this question, because I do connect a lot of our students with different programs. Some do programs here in Williamsburg during the year where they get their phlebotomy or their medical assistant or CNA certification. Others do it over the summer. I don't know every program in every location, but I can typically help you find resources to that. The certifications are going to be done typically either a community college or a clinical training center. We have one of those in town. And then you would take a state board to be certified in whichever field you're in. So if you do have a question about finding one of those, I do have a list of Williamsburg area items, but I can typically find those, and I'm sure it's the same for our pre-med students as well.
Yeah, so I know experience is really important for pre-med students. Doug, what advice do you have for students?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of on-campus resources that help to match some students with these kind of experiences, and the pre-health advisors get like emails about where local clinics are recruiting people. But I think also your peers are a great resource in this aspect, because I think a lot of the students that I've talked to in pre-med oftentimes find their clinical hours, you know, kind of because they know another student said, oh, I'm working here, and then just here, you know, they're looking for someone. So I think there's like a lot of different networking opportunities to be able to find them. And I think they're all over, you know, Williamsburg, in the kind of local area here. But you can also find them if you go home for the summer, oftentimes, like, and we can kind of help facilitate some of those interactions, or sometimes you can kind of find them on your own.
I know our Career Center on campus works really closely with area clinics and hospitals, and they can be a really great resource as well for students that are trying to find some of these opportunities. Does William & Mary have any elective courses or programs to help prepare for the MCAT? And I'll broaden that question out, and really any test that a student would need to take for grad school.
I don't think we have any like formal credit bearing kind of MCAT prep courses, but I think what you'll find is a lot of times I teach biochemistry. So, you know, a lot of times a lot of students are taking that course like the semester before they take the MCAT, and that just, it's kind of double dipping, studying for the MCAT while taking an actual credit bearing course that's counting towards my major or just even towards elective credits. So I think a lot of classes that you're going to take as the prereqs are going to be the classes that help prepare you for the MCAT. And then it's you kind of figuring out, maybe you take a study course on your own, or you figure out your mechanism to study best for that test. But I don't think we have there's no formal MCAT prep classes to my knowledge, unless they popped up, and I do not know.
I will say too, our library, swim library, does have resources that students can check out to prepare for, again, GRE, MCATs, whatever it is that's next for you. And Ashley, what about for pre-health?
So very similar. Most of our pre-health students are taking the GRE, which in comparison to the MCAT is a little bit of a lighter test, but still does require that test prep. But a lot of our students have traditionally just formed study groups. And if they need to work through that test taking strategy, they're doing it in groups. Sometimes it's the older students mentoring the younger students. And so our upperclassmen who have sometimes taken those exams can then offer some tips. So nothing formal on our end either, but I think using your network and also the library resources is a great idea.
And there are a lot of student clubs and orgs on campus. And so I know a lot of times our clubs and orgs that are more professionally focused will offer workshops and things like that to help prepare students for these tests. So that can be another option too. Would you recommend double majoring biology and chemistry with pre-med, or just stick with one? And I'm looking
I
at
think you
Doug.
just need you just need chemistry. Let's be honest here. Biology is garbage. Just kidding. No, I mean, I think, it's up to you. I think it's double majoring or single majoring is not going to like do anything that much for your application. They're going to look at your personal statement. They're going to look at your transcripts and your letters of rec. So I think if, those two you can double dip a little bit on those two majors. So there are two logical majors if you're going to double major, as opposed to like, we have chemistry, theater double major. So like, you could do it, but it doesn't matter. I think whatever can make you best succeed and make you the best candidate for these schools is the best choice for you.
Yeah.
But I think chemistry would be superior if you have to pick.
No bias there. And Ashley, for students applying to PA and nursing school, any thoughts on double majoring for that?
I have some who do. The common combination I see for a lot of them is kinesiology and psychology.
Okay.
And that's more of a logistics thing because it's really hard to get into some of the psychology classes. And so if you're a major, then that you get the priority registration. And so a lot of ours will, because they need probably 3 or 4 psychology courses. But I would agree. The question I get is it going to make me a better candidate to have 2 majors? That's not what they're looking at. They're looking at your prerequisites, your GPA, your volunteering, your clinical, and all of those other items that they emphasize. Same thing with concentration. Some of our majors have different concentrations. The schools don't know technically what that means. They just know how you did in the classes they asked you to take and your overall performance. And so I think that's the big focus. It is not going to make or break you to have 2 majors as opposed to 1, or a minor and a major as opposed to just a major.
Right. Question about how add drop works. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about the add drop period and how students will kind of navigate that?
Sure. So as Shelly talked about earlier, you'll have kind of a period of registration that'll happen during orientation and in that sort of first week and a half so of classes. So you'll do your final registration period during orientation, and then add drop will open, as Shelly said, for all students in the afternoon on Tuesday, the 29th of August, right? That's the right date. And so during that time, that's when you get to attend classes and kind of make choices about what you're keeping on your schedule. So you have some time to kind of sit in a class, look at a syllabus, take a look at things and make a choice and adjust your schedule as you need to. So the add drop period is nice because your schedule just changes. I think one of your questions was, can schools see how you add drop and what changes you make? Nope, you will just change. Whatever schedule you end up with at the end of add drop will be the schedule that you have. So it's a nice opportunity to kind of test some things out, get a feel for what your full schedule looks like, all those classes together at one time, instead of kind of looking at your schedule and thinking that looks good. You'll have an opportunity to experience it and then make changes to your schedule and then carry on with your semester.
I think another important piece of the add drop period is that's oftentimes the first chance you have to see the syllabus for the class. And so then kind of when you look at all of them together, can get a feel for, is this a manageable load or do I need to make some adjustments? So again, that's the nice part of add drop is it gives you an opportunity to kind of try to forecast out what your semester is going to look like and make changes within that aren't permanent, right? So if you drop a class, that's not going to be on your transcript or anything like that. Next question. So it looks like there may be some confusion on human physiology versus animal physiology if you're a pre-med student, and what is preferred.
I mean, I think for pre-med, you don't have to take physiology, period. It's like one of those kind of recommended classes. So in my opinion, you can live your best life and do what you want to do, because I want you to have an enjoyable experience here at William & Mary. But like, and I don't think it's going to affect you, but I don't know the nuances of the kinesiology course versus the biology course. I mean, I think it's different aspects, right? So I think you can do what you want. I mean, do what you want, but like, it's not going to hurt you either way.
So the human phys course is one that is of interest to many of our pre-meds. A lot of pre-medical students take this, mostly because we talk about humans. I teach one of the sections of human phys and I focus on humans only, of course. And so all of us that teach human phys, we focus on the physiology, but different diseases that affect the different systems. So I think it's really interesting for the pre-meds. Animal phys is going to be really common for the biology majors because it counts towards their major. And human phys does not, because human phys is not housed in biology. So I think that's a main nuance there. They both cover phys. They both have a lot of similarities because if we're looking at mammals, a lot of things are similar. But if you're really interested in humans, that's what we do in the human phys class. If you are not a kinesiology major and you're pre-med, you would not need the lab, although some choose to take it because it does complement the lecture. The kines majors on some of our paths, they do have to have that lab. And for most other pre-health, you actually do need that. So you have to have 4 credits of human phys. And so you would want to take the lecture in the lab. And it doesn't have to be taken together. Typically, we don't have as many lab seats as lecture for that course because not everybody needs a lab, but you can take them separately with no issue.
Thank you. If I already took AP Calc BC and AP Stat in high school, would you recommend that I continue to take higher level math classes in college now?
Do you like math classes? I mean, if you like math classes, you should take them. I think the only thing I will say is you can if you want to. Like, I think, again, this is, again, your personal journey through college. But I think at the same time, you might also want to start thinking about what major you need and see, you want to also see how those AP credits are going to transfer into William & Mary and what they're counting as, right? So like some majors may require you to take some of these high, like for instance, if you decide to be a chemistry major, then you're going to have to take Calc 2 and multivariable in order to be prepared for our physical chemistry your junior, senior year. So you may have to based on your major. In terms of the pre-health perspective, you probably are fine and you don't have to if you don't love the math, but up to you again. I mean, it's my opinion.
Also look at the schools you're going to apply to because some may not take AP credit. I know the EVMS PA early assurance program does not typically accept that AP credit for any of its requirements. And so then you may have to take a course here to satisfy the requirement they're asking for.
In your opinion, is chemistry, biology, and a kinesiology class too much for a freshman?
I've had people take the 3 together successfully with no issue. I've had people sign up for all 3 and be overwhelmed. So I think it is how you approach those classes. If you're going to take all 3, you're going to have some really good study habits because they're pretty intense. Biology, and if the kinesiology class that most freshmen take, Intro to Human Body, are taken at the same time, they typically complement because we teach Intro to the Human Body as an intro to the human biology. So I think those 2 complement, but there's also some big differences in the 2. But I think it really is you have to dedicate time to studying because they are 3 intense areas.
Yeah, and I think like like again, just keeping them. Everyone is different. People can handle different things, right? So like I think you need to really take an honest assessment of like, where do I stand? How do I feel about these kind of subjects? And like there are on the advising website, or not on the Blackboard site you're getting added to, there are like pre-tests that you can kind of take to see, or assessment tests. At least the chemistry for sure has one, biology is not. But like you can kind of take that test and see how you feel. And if it's like, whoa. Also, the other thing when you're taking these 3 very STEMmy kind of classes, the one thing you need to really keep in the back of your mind is that you may have a week where you have 3 exams within 2 days of each other. So that just is sometimes a lot to manage when you're still learning how to study in the college level versus the high school level, right? Because a lot of students I found, teaching general chemistry can just ease through high school because we're not asking you to apply knowledge as much, or the way what we're asking of you is a little bit more rigorous here. So then they really haven't learned to study the right way. And that's sometimes what that first semester is for, right? So like, if you feel strong that you have a strong background in those 3 subjects, is it feasible? 100% it's feasible. May you have some miserable weeks your first year or first semester? Potentially. Can it be done? Yes. But do you want to do it? It's up to you. I think it's more of a personal journey thing. I'm saying personal journey a lot today, but that's okay. We're all on one. So
We're all on one.
And I will say
That's
too,
my
that's
personal
another, oh, sorry, Doug. I will say too, that's another opportunity for add drop, right? Like Shelley was saying, you get in and you can kind of take a look at the timeline on those courses and see where your crazy weeks might be.
Mhm,
I also just dropped in the chat, resources from academic well-being
mhm.
on campus that helps you with studying and time management. And just, I encourage you to use those resources early, so you can kind of get ahead of some of those things and keep yourself on track instead of getting to a point in a semester you might feel a little bit more overwhelmed. So there's some good resources in there to kind of help you plan for your first semester here.
Another thing to think about with these three in particular, if you are pre-med or pre-health, but not planning on being a bio major, bio is actually going to be 1 year typically, or maybe 1 year and a couple classes, whereas chemistry is going to be 5 semesters for some of our students. And so some will choose to take chemistry their first year and say biology for their second. And the timeline actually works out perfectly with that. It's a preference. Some choose to put them both together. But for instance, if you're going to be a kinesiology major, I might say take chemistry and take intro in our department because that's going to be needed for anatomy and phys. And then you could take bio at another time with no problem at all.
But what I'm hearing is you should really just take chemistry.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
It looks like there are 3 questions in our Q&A, all related to volunteer hours, internship hours, clinics. So again, I think kind of talking big picture, what are the different schools looking for? And how early should students get started on this process?
So for pre-health, which outside of pre-med, therapy programs are typically going to ask for, I think the number is usually around 100, although there is some variation. OT schools, occupational therapy tends to be lower. Physical therapy tends to be a little higher. And the key with both of those is they want 2 different settings, so inpatient and outpatient typically. And so you want to split your time. For nursing, most of the Masters of Nursing programs and the accelerated BSN programs don't require any clinical experience, although many of our students, because they enjoy that setting, they tend to do those anyway, but they're not going to be required on the application. PA school is going to be that minimum 1,000. And the PA programs want you to have direct patient contact. And so you typically have to be certified to be able to work directly with patients. So that's anything from an EMT, a CNA, a phlebotomist. The one in the state of Virginia that's a little different is medical assistants. They do not technically have to be certified, but if you're going to work in a large clinical practice, so like a Sentara, Riverside, Bon Secours, any of those, they don't typically hire individuals who are not certified. So that's one thing just to keep in mind. You do typically have to be certified. That's typically going to be a couple months process, and then you can start working. So I think with the PA route in particular, I encourage the earlier the better, just so you're not overwhelmed with 1,000 hours your junior and senior year.
Yeah, for pre-med, it's kind of a moving target and no one really will pin it down. I think roughly like around 200 clinical hours is the last number that I've really heard. And those can be taken kind of whenever, so you can spread out some, and there's a lot of different ways to do so. Like a lot of students they work as EMTs. A lot of students will be scribes at some of the local hospitals, things like that. So there is a number, it's a significant number and something that you should kind of try and start early and kind of dig in on. But so it's not something you want to save for the last semester of school, perhaps. But if you start early, it's good. But yeah, I would say roughly 100 to 200, probably closer to 200 is what I more typically see in students. And also that's on top, also on top of that, they like to see some shadowing experiences as well. So just kind of keeping all those kind of opportunities in mind. And so a lot of those, again, are set up through the kind of clubs or by, just peer mentorship or just you looking or peer pre-med advisors kind of knowing some of the opportunities that are out there. So yeah, I guess I'm looking summer internship after freshman year. That's probably something you probably want to start looking at, maybe like winter break-ish, maybe trying to set that stuff up. Is my opinion, but I don't know. And the other thing I would say for med school too is that med schools are more and more now starting to look at like research experiences. So, trying to get a little bit of that in at some point at William & Mary, which is, I think, what is a real good reason to come to William & Mary, is because we're really good at that undergraduate research experience. So you should take advantage of it. So just trying to think of like potentially taking advantage of that as whenever you feel ready to do so. Again, it's not something I would jump in week 1 of your freshman year, because you have 20,000 other things that are doing, and like you're also going to go to this club fair, and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to join cheese club and chemistry club and Lego club and all these other clubs, and you just don't oversubscribe yourself, because there's so many opportunities out there. So like pacing yourself, it is a marathon, not a sprint. And I feel like sometimes that first 2 or 3 weeks of courses, you get this real overwhelmed nature because you're going to go through orientation. You feel like there's so many things out there to do and you want to do them all, but you have time to do them. So don't try to do them all at once, is my advice to that. So like when you're doing these experiences or these internships, you have time to do it. You have 4 years. So like pace yourself is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think I know for pre-PA and pre-nursing, again, Ashley's the expert and has a lot of resources that she can refer students to. For the pre-therapies, occupational and physical, Evie Burnett is our pre-health advisor. And similarly, she's really tapped into the local community and can make good referrals for students to those experiences. In our career center, there are a lot of opportunities that they help facilitate with local hospitals and clinics. So I put links to the General Career Center site, and then specifically STEM careers. Don Snyder is the industry advisor for those there. And again, he facilitates a lot of relationships with local doctors to try to set these up for students. So just to say, there's lots of places where you can find these opportunities, and working with your pre-health, pre-med advisor, working with the career center, working with your pre-major advisor, like between all of us, we can make sure you're really well resourced to get started. Those are all the questions I'm seeing. I'm going to do one last call for a final question, just to make sure we're not missing anything. And while we wait, I don't know, Doug and Ashley, if you had any other things you want to make sure you mention. Well, Doug, you unmuted, so I made an assumption.
Oh, well, I was already unmuted, so I muted, and then I was like, oh, that looks suspicious. So maybe I'll mute again. Where can we find this recording? I'll answer that. I don't know where we can find that. Someone else can.
Megan can answer that question.
I can answer that question. We will put this recording up. It'll be on the website for my office, which is the Office of Undergraduate Academic Affairs, and then it'll also be, we have a YouTube channel, so we'll post it there. And I can post it in College Studies as well. So we'll try and cover our bases so that folks can see it, or we come back to it if you've asked some questions, want to be refreshed on the answers.
I guess I think I can just give you some Doug Young advice that is unsolicited. Like I think, it's really exciting time to be here, and like this first semester, just really enjoy it. And like, again, with a lot of times with pre-health students, they're very, very motivated and they have this goal in mind, but also take time for yourselves to have some enjoyment of the college experience as well. And, and give yourself some grace, especially as you are adjusting. Like sometimes maybe this is the first time you have to do your own laundry, or maybe this is the first time you have to do all these things. So like realizing there's going to be a lot of adjustments, especially this first semester or two, and just trying to make new friends and finding all these new people that you're now around, and different levels of expectations in terms of academics and things like that. So just like, there's nothing you can do that's going to destroy any dream this first semester or whatever. There's no wrong. Well, I guess I take that back. There are probably many things you could do, but there's nothing really like that will accidentally, hopefully happen that would destroy, so no matter what classes you get in, there is a way to fix it. No matter what, like if you do poorly on an exam, use it as a learning experience, and that also you're learning for like, then now you know how to better prepare for that. So like, just allow yourselves, sometimes you come in laser focused and just kind of maybe unfocus a little bit and just breathe, would be my advice to a lot of pre-health students out there.
I think the biggest piece of advice I like to give all of my students that come through my door is, you don't have to have it all figured out today. I was a pre-med student for many years and then didn't go to medical school. And so it took me a while to figure that out. I now get to advise you all, and that's the fun part. But if you don't know exactly what you want to be when you grow up, that's okay. And if you think you're pre-health and then end up not being, that's okay. If you aren't sure which health you want to be, that's okay too. We are here to help you with those decisions and help you understand maybe what you're actually interested in as you go through this process. But you're not alone. There's a lot of us that are here to help you guys out, and just know you don't have to have it all figured out today. There's some common things you can do while you figure that process out, some common courses, and we're here if you need us.
And I think that's a great thing too about coming to a school like William Mary, where we're really focused in liberal arts, right? Like sometimes you have only been, maybe you grew up watching Grey's Anatomy, so you want to be a doctor, right? Like, but you don't know all this other cool stuff that's out there. So like take some fun classes, like use that elective time to like see if you really want to do, some of this pre-med stuff. I'm not discouraging a pre-med path, but like sometimes you feel there's a lot of pressure or there's other things, and really you find something you're more passionate about, and you should, hopefully there aren't a lot of parents on here that follow your passion to like whatever, but you should follow your passion, even if it's not like being a doctor. But at the same time, be a doctor if that's your passion, so but explore. I would explore.
Doug, we got one last question in the Q&A. Is it okay to take Gen Chem without taking chemistry at the same time? Right, like
calc.
yeah, sorry, calc.
No, you can. Yes, you can. I think it's fine if you would get calc in a lot of. I teach Gen Chem everyone. I haven't taught it in a couple of years, but there's not really a lot of calculus in it. It's stuff that you can figure out pretty directly. I think it's when you get to the higher level chemistries where there's more calculus. So you're fine if you take chem without the calculus, as long as you can use a calculator and do logs, which are not calculus, but that's about what you need for Gen Chem.
And then what do you recommend for those who want to go more biochemistry, molecular bio route? I'm looking at Doug, at least for biochem. I can't speak to.
Sure. I think, I guess in terms of course selection, I think so eventually everyone is pre-med will have to take biochemistry. So there you need to have both Gen Chem 1 and 2 and organic 1 and 2. But also you don't have, for biochemistry, you actually don't have to take biology at all. But I think if you are interested in the biochemistry or more molecular bio stuff, like I think taking the bio 203, 204 sequence is great. Maybe even taking molecular cell eventually. That's kind of one of those fuzzy line pre-med requirements that's not really a requirement, but maybe a good thing to take because it's kind of like biochemistry from a biologist perspective. But there are a lot of classes, and there are also a lot of like upper division electives in kind of those fields. Like there's advanced biochemistry, there's a protein function and folding and functioning class. There's like a bunch of other stuff that you could take to when you get higher up in the curriculum.
So I'll just speak a little bit to the bio route because that's actually my background is biology. If you're going to go the molecular biology route, you probably want to check out some of the research labs on campus. Because that's going to be a really big part of that field. We have that in biology. A lot of our kinesiology labs are also that type of work because we're human biologists. And so we do that type of work over here. But I think if you want to be exposed to what that side of biology actually is, the research labs are going to give you a little bit better of a glimpse of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for spending time with us today. Really appreciate your insight and your advice for incoming students as they're thinking about how to plan for their first semester as pre-med, pre-health students. And then as Megan said, this session has been recorded and will be posted on the OUAA website soon. For those that need to refer back for something, we'll do that there. But thank you all so much for everything.
Yeah, and if you have any questions in the meantime, my email is on the website, so you can feel free to email me or whoever, or the other pre-med advisors.
Mine is on the kinesiology website, and it's the Everhart, not Queen. So when you're looking at it, that's me. But feel free to email me if you have questions.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.